Nagi is eliminated from Blue Lock, his talent has withered away, and everyone got a harsh reminder of what Blue Lock really is. An experiment to simply make the best, and the mad lad running everything, Ego himself, only wants crazy bastards who won't be satisfied until they're the world's best, or as the currently recognized best in the world Noel Noah puts it, Ego was my comrade in arms, now I am the best in the world, while he's obsessed with the world's best, possessed by it. However, we later learn that even the best still wields his own ego. Noah wants to still be stronger. You can never be satisfied if you want to be the greatest. The reality of why Nagi, regardless of his potential talent, has failed and been eliminated from Blue Lock. The first time a major character is going through this after 300 chapters of the Blue Lock manga, that has led some people to say, if chapter 300 is where Nagi officially leaves the story, Nagi just might beat out Snuffy for being the best written character. So a few issues with that. I don't think Nagi being eliminated at chapter 300 makes him a better written or a well written character in any way. There's other factors to argue that, but in that context it doesn't really relate to one another that much. But with the mention of the series about to reach 300 chapters, which is coming out in a few days, people need to remember that most other manga by this point, or a lot, may have actually had a major character death in the story, leaving a lasting impact. So the elimination, or you could say defeat of Nagi, does make sense in the context of that. Blue Lock is by no means a new series. Our protagonist Isagi, who was around the bottom at the start, is officially recognized as the #1 or equal #1 player within Blue Lock, and they are about to take on the entire world in the next arc. Times have indeed changed quite a bit, so in regards to that point, it does make sense for a major character, top 5 striker since the very start, to be eliminated. But there's also other things we need to recognize. It's pretty much a fact that Nagi got satisfied by scoring 1 goal. Yes, an absolutely insane goal, potentially the best in the entire series to this day, but still is something that left the major impact, and as expressed and demonstrated throughout the entire chapter, goes directly against the one running pretty much everything we're watching, Ego himself, who, based on what we saw from a lot of the masters, he's for the most part right for what it takes to create the actual best. But when talking about the future of Nagi, of course we have his dedicated side manga, which highlights his insane popularity. But as a lot of people point out, that is way behind compared to the current story. Meaning, if this really is the last time we see Nagi in the main series, we won't be getting new reveals for many years down the road, which is unfortunate in that regard. But Nagi having a role, or maybe a return in some way, could or probably will potentially happen. I don't think he's going to, never play football again or anything like that. There are people theorizing that we could have another wildcard situation occur, but I personally doubt that, if I'm being honest. And if we're being realistic, we pretty much have enough strikers within Blue Lock now for the under 20 World Cup, with all the other players making up the top 23 to move on to the next round, covering most of the other positions, likely much better than what Nagi could do, as they pretty much became one of these positions throughout the recent Neo Egoist League. Even Rio, who's closely connected to Nagi's ultimate downfall, had much more growth throughout this arc and can definitely provide much more to an entire team than what Nagi can at this point. As if we compare Nagi's performance or current perceived abilities in the story to the other strikers within Blue Lock, you really see the huge gap. Of course, we have Isagi and Rin at #1. Isagi is confirmed as outright superior to Nagi by Ego throughout this chapter, and most people agree with that with his recent performance. Rin was introduced as pretty much the #1 striker within Blue Lock and has remained in that position ever since, with him being the main rival of our protagonist Isagi at this point. Then we have Shido, who was introduced as virtually the second best, or maybe on par with Rin, just a different path. Throughout the recent arc, or I should say the most recent match, his performance wasn't as good, but he's been able to remain this top 3, top 4 position. Of course, a lot of arguments have occurred throughout the fandom about whether Shido or Baro is better. If we go based on performance throughout this arc, and I could say evolution, Baro is definitely better as an overall striker, but the potential and pure insanity of Shido cannot be underestimated and is still a major factor. Then when it comes to other strikers throughout this arc, we have Bachara, who funny enough was the one to pretty much end Nagi in the story like he's done for many characters, has been able to grow to an insane amount and still remain as one of the best strikers throughout Blue Lock, and honestly surpass Nagi by quite a bit now when it comes to his overall abilities. Prior to this arc, I would imagine most people would actually rank Nagi as a better striker compared to Bachara, but at this point that's definitely not the case. And then for various other characters who probably aren't going to be pure strikers moving into the future of the story, but will still have a major role, such as Ryo, Chigiri, characters on Nagi's team who performed many times better than him throughout the entire arc, and even in some prior ones could be viewed as on a similar skill level, just not having that insane peak potential Nagi has. And then goons like Kunigami outright scored more goals than Nagi throughout this arc, and that all once again connects to ego, what every one of these players has and what Nagi unfortunately doesn't due to his satisfaction with scoring the previous goal in the arc. So yes, the most recent Blue Lock chapter was absolutely wild. Ego went in unlike any time before, but everything he said makes sense with what we got from Nagi throughout the series. He couldn't prove himself in a match. There have been many times where he's shown us he can shine, but he's too inconsistent. His salary is appropriate for a player of this quality. And it seems as though Nagi is pretty much aware and accepting of this. He didn't say really anything outside of the final panel in the most recent chapter. The next one's probably going to be some final words to the likes of Ryo and the other players as he officially takes his leave, something he's going to accept, but his potential rise in the future, whether it's in the side manga, off screen for some crazy return at some point, we'll have to wait and see. Of course, drop all of your predictions down below. There are various people who are, I guess, dropping the manga from what I can tell, I guess the dedicated Nagi fans. I like Nagi, he's not like a top 3 or top 4 character to me personally, and considering the length of Blue Lock, it's kinda required, and in conjunction with his side manga and all the other emphasis put on Nagi throughout the series, his rise and crazy return in the future potential is definitely there, and will allow more time to be spent on the remaining players. Something you can see has been a common trend throughout the recent arc. Isagi is without a doubt the protagonist. We get other characters having their moment, having their backstory, their shine, etc. But it all comes back to Isagi. This is his story and always will. And with all that, I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe for more and check out this video.